Okay guys, welcome to another video. I was recently looking through some of my old videos and I couldn't believe that I didn't have a review of this saw out yet. Now, I filmed a lot of testing. A couple years ago I was comparing different saws, how quickly they cut and stuff like that, but I never ended up reviewing these saws. So in today's video, the saws I'm going to talk about are the Silky saws. This is the Silky BigBoy 240, and this is the Silky BigBoy 360. Today I want to talk, it will apply to all Silky saws, but today I want to talk about the Silky BigBoy and a couple things to keep in mind before you buy it. So, what do I think about this saw specifically? Well, as some of you may know, I'm a huge fan of Silky saws. And I understand there's other companies out there, Corona, for example. They make Japanese style pull saws. Real quick, I want to address Silky versus Corona because I've tried Corona saws out. Now, Corona, I kind of consider them the budget Silky saw. They are a pull or a Japanese style saw, and they are designed for arborists and for pruning. What I found out, and this is just purely from a lot of use, but again, just my opinion, my experience, Corona saws, the steel that they use and the way the blade is hardened or the way the teeth are cut or whatever, they dull out before Silky saws do. Now, with that being said, understand that Corona saws are at least half the price of Silky saws. So if you're rarely using your saw, maybe go get a Corona saw. They're more inexpensive, but their blades do dull quicker than Silky saws do. At least from my experience. The other thing with Corona saws, they're not made as robustly. But again, if you're using them not very often, they might be a better choice for you. Personally, I choose Silky for a number of reasons, but primarily it's just the saw, I use, I guess you could say, professionally and as a hobbyist. That's why I choose Silky. It's what I'm used to. So today, I want to talk about the Silky BigBoy. Now, you're probably watching this video because you're looking on Amazon or you're looking on their site and you want some quick cutting but compact, lightweight saw. And I understand. A couple things to keep in mind. Just because this blade is longer than other folding saws, other folding Silky saws, it doesn't mean the saw is better. What do I mean? Well, you do have a longer stroke. You do have more reach. You can span larger logs. With that being said, there's a drawback to a longer saw blade of a pull cut variety, and that is blade flex. This is the Silky BigBoy 240, this is the BigBoy 360. They both have 1.3 millimeter thick blades, and that's important. I also have some Pocket Boys. Those have 1.3 millimeter thick blades. The problem I've found after years, this one I probably got about 4 years ago, and I use it quite a bit. But the problem I found out is the longer the blade you get, see how flexible that blade is compared to that. I'm using about the same amount of pressure. It looks like I'm just fabricating this, but this has a lot more flex. The problem I've ran into, and your mileage may vary, but with the BigBoy, it has a 1.3 millimeter thick blade. The Katana Boy, which is about double the price of this with a longer blade, has a 2 millimeter thick blade. So it has a longer blade, but a thicker blade. So kind of a more heavier duty blade. The problem I found when I'm cutting this, especially if I'm not bearing down but kind of going to town, is a couple times the blade will catch on the push and I'll get something like that. And quickly I'll pull it out and keep sawing. But that happening over and over again, what happens, and you probably can't see this on camera, but I can see it, is it has some waves and some warpage in the blade. So the teeth are still very sharp, but the cutting efficiency, the cutting speed of this saw goes down. Purely on the user, you're hitting more friction in the cut. I'm not saying this is a bad saw. It's lightweight. It weighs, I think, exactly a pound. It comes in, at least the Big Boy, in this obnoxious yellow color, but in the woods it'll be a little harder to lose. There's different teeth varieties. So the Big Boy is the extra large teeth, and it says 6.5, so that's probably 6.5 teeth per inch, and or maybe 6.5 teeth per inch, and it has a curved blade. There's other Big Boy saws out there with the large teeth and the medium teeth that have a straight blade. For bushcrafting, for camping, for bucking logs up or firewood up, stick with a straight blade. They cut quicker. As you can see on this Gone Boy, straight blade. Most of the Silky saws I own, straight blade. Why would you choose a curved blade saw? Well, they're designed for when you're working above or below the ground, or above or below, especially above. I don't know how much of this is on camera, but when you're sawing, the curved blade is to work in unison with your body's natural anatomy and range of motion. So cutting above, see, you never cut like this, or at least I don't. It's not natural, and that's working in a straight line. You'll naturally, when you're cutting a branch above your head, or let's just say above your shoulder, you'll naturally do this motion. That's the exact curvature, or that's the exact, curvature of the blade. Now for cross cutting, working down here, when you're pulling back and forth, stick with a straight blade. They cut quicker. But that, some people don't know that, but that's why the curved blades exist, because again, these are designed for arborists and tree trimmers and pruners and stuff like that. So if you're looking for a bushcrafting, camping, bug out bag type saw, something kind of small, light, easy to transport and stuff like that, I would recommend the Gone Boy. They come in different blade lengths. If you want something a little bit smaller, the Pocket Boy. And I mean, there's other ones, the Super Excel and the Ultra Excel and the F180. And I'm only talking about folding saws in this discussion. Farther on, I might bring out some of my fixed blade or scabbard type saws. But when you're just cutting firewood, for example, you should be cutting right here because it's more efficient. And if you're cutting firewood up here, that means most likely it's a living tree. So why would you be cutting green wood for firewood? So most of the time, to get most efficiency, I would want a log right here, kind of right in front of me. And in those circumstances, get a straight blade saw, inches. So this is like a 9.5 inch blade. And my rule of thumb, you don't need to follow this, but if you're picking a saw, some people say 1/3, and that's the best circumstance. What I would say is 9.5 inch divided by 2 is the maximum log size that you can efficiently cut. Now, because it's 9.5, you can cut a 9.5 inch log, you won't have any stroke. So 9.5 would be 4 1/4. I round it down to 4. So this is for 4 inch and less logs. That's how I do it. This is 14, so this is for 7 inch logs. Just think to yourself, when you're out there camping, what size saw, or what size logs are you going to be sawing? I find myself cutting 4 inch, 3 inch, 2 inch dry logs for small fires. Now, if you are in the boreal forest or places where you find these down trees that are just massive, many people would want these big silky saws like the Katana Boy and the Sugawaza and the Zubat and the Gomtero, and there's a couple other ones. I'm trying to remember all of them. or all of them that they sell. If you are in that environment, what I'd recommend to you is a bow saw. Now understand they're more bulky. They might not cut as efficiently, but the problem with the big silky saws, the Katana Boy, I looked before this video, the Katana Boy, the saw on Amazon, 500 millimeter saw, 20-inch blade, is $99. The blade is $97. Okay, so it cuts really efficiently until you get some warp in that blade, which you will, or until the teeth dull out, which they will, and they're not sharpenable. So this I'm just going to throw for illustration. I understand it's bulky. This is a handmade buck saw. 30-inch blade, so using my calculations, 15-inch log maximum. That's why this measurement from here to here is 15 inches. The benefit of a saw like this is using a high quality blade, which this is they're not made anymore, so don't try looking, but I got about 10 of these Swedish blades. They're called Bushman blades, made in Sweden. And with a high quality Swedish source blade, which I'll try and find maybe on eBay, or maybe you do live in Europe and you could find these cheaper. These cut nearly as quick as the big silky saws. With a benefit, these blades, not this exact blade, but bow saw blades are very cheap. They're also compact. If you're putting together like a Pioneer kit or like a end of the world kit, or a I'm never coming home kit, for $30 you could buy 3 of these blades and keep them in your pack and make one of these saws out in the woods. The benefit of bow saws is the blade is under tension at all times, which means it doesn't mean you won't get any binding or the blade bending, but you'll get a lot less of it. The other thing is, at least this blade cuts on both the push and the pull, so you're cutting at twice the efficiency. For each stroke, you're kind of cutting twice, and a silky saw you'd only cut once. So I don't really recommend the really big silky saws, mainly because of the price of the blades, because they cut quick. Many of them cut quicker than some underpowered chainsaws, and they're a lot lighter, and they're human powered, and they don't take gas, and so on and so forth. But once the blade bends a little bit, which they will, or once the teeth dull out, which they will, they won't cut that quick. These, the teeth are sharpenable. The teeth on this actually just sharpened. The blades are under tension, so even if you do get a little warpage, if your saw blade is properly tensioned, it pulls those kinks out of there for the most part. And these blades are a lot lighter, cheaper, so you can carry a couple of them with you. The other thing that I don't like about this saw is because of its size and where you're supposed to hold it, you're really far away from the log. Your hand is far away from the log. So it's kind of like with a huge knife, it's a little harder to use. With this, to cut, I guess with a lot of control, you're really far away from the blade, so it's hard to control. You can get 2 hands on this. But all in all, the Silky BigBoy for bushcrafting, for camping, for bucking firewood, for woods processing, whatever you call it, I wouldn't recommend the Silky BigBoy. It might come as a surprise because some of you know I'm a huge fan of silky saws, and I am. What I would recommend is a Silky Gomboy. Now, I understand you can't cut as big of logs, but generally speaking, at least what I found is if there's a big tree that you want to cut through, most likely it will have limbs that are smaller than the trunk, if that makes sense. So you cut the limbs off instead of this huge massive log. The other thing to keep in mind is how much wood you really need. How do you need a cord of wood for an overnight camp? Sometimes you do. Or would it be smarter to pack a warmer sleeping bag and make a smaller fire? That's just my logic. This is probably the number one saw I would recommend for just bug out bags and stuff like that. 10-inch blade or 9.5-inch blade, 4-inch log is fairly good for it. It's compact, it can slip in a pocket, it can fit into almost any kit. It weighs, I want to say 6 ounces. It's way more efficient than the beloved Baco Laplander, even though the blade is a little bit bigger. And as you can see, the size of them is fairly similar. You're talking an inch or 2 inches. But all in all, I just talked about the alternatives I would pick to this saw. I don't hate the saw, and I understand it cuts quick and all that stuff. The one last downside of this saw over smaller saws is for doing stuff in tight quarters, whether it's crafting or cutting small branches where you have to hold it. This is really cumbersome, and unless you're in like a perfect situation, it's hard to get full strokes. If something's close to your body, or you're using your body to support a log, it's really hard to get a full stroke. It works most efficiently if you're kind of far away and you can get a full stroke. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So all in all, I don't recommend the saw. I'm not saying it's a bad saw. They're kind of expensive. They're like $70, 60 somewhere, I don't know. The blades are $50, $40 or something, which you will most likely, if you buy this saw, especially if you're somebody new to the woods. That's the last thing I wanted to say. You're not used to using a saw. The smaller saws will be more forgiving because they have less of that blade warpage, so you'll be less likely to get a big bend in your saw blade. But Silky BigBoy I would not recommend. This spring I might do more saw testing and show you some other Silky saws of this size that I would recommend over this. But again, hope you guys like this video, hope you guys like this content. If you did like this video, I'd encourage you to hit the like button down below the video, and if you have any comments, questions, alternatives, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I'll try and answer those.